Are you waiting for me? Okay. Call the meeting to order. The first item is approval of the minutes. That'd be from November 4th, I think it was. Got a copy of those. A motion for approval.
Move to approve. Second.
Any discussion or thoughts? All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Election of officers, 2021. And Alan, we just need to take everyone individually, or?
Historically, we have, it has been a motion to reappoint the existing officers. One thing that you may want to keep in mind is that it's normally president, vice president, and executive secretary. Well, your executive secretary is going to be changing. I don't know if Matt, if it's okay for the board to just say it's the superintendent.
Yeah,
at the time would be the executive secretary.
Yeah, that's fine, and you can do it as.
Otherwise, you're going to have to come back here late spring and redo it.
No, that's. I mean, that would be permissible.
Did we have to approve the minutes of the two little special meetings we had?
I would recommend that you do approve the minutes of the special meetings. Yeah.
Okay. Well,
Sorry to interrupt.
we will drop back and look at the two special meetings that we had back in the outside, one of them.
We had one on November 4th and one on November 17th.
Correct.
Correct. I want to take the one on the 4th first here. That's the, I think, the meeting in the picnic area.
I move we'd approve the minutes on our special meeting on November 4th.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the second meeting on the 17th then.
I'd move we approve the minutes from the special meeting on November 17th.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I do note it says Opal's motion, maybe I missed that at the time, Randy Lauer be appointed superintendent upon retirement of the current superintendent, Alan Nail. It sounds like something that Putin would do.
That a student would do?
Sounds like something Putin would do.
Oh.
Well, yeah, that's next month. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Election of officers. We have each one nomination for president. I'll nominate John Gans.
As far as we know, he's willing to continue to serve in that capacity.
Yeah, I think his one regret in not being here to defend himself was that he knew that he wouldn't be here to defend himself. But he's aware.
Okay, very good.
Any other nominations? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Vice President.
I'll nominate Mike Gary for Vice President.
We'll second that.
Come on, it can be quicker than that. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And Executive Secretary, we're approving someone for the office.
I'd defer to Matt how that is best done, but it should probably be noted that I wouldn't be the executive secretary through the year.
Okay.
I would.
So just leave it blank?
Let me
Or just name the superintendent.
So the executive secretary position is temporarily being filled by you at the moment. You don't intend to fill that in a long-term capacity.
Correct.
And so the question on the floor is how to nominate should you nominate an executive secretary today or defer that? My answer would be that as long as you're willing to continue as an interim executive secretary, that you can defer the nomination and approval of a permanent position until your retirement or until you have another name, and as long as you're willing to maintain that position until you have a successor.
That sounds fine.
So what, we're just moving on to treasurer, or we actually are?
No, we don't do that for Park Board, no.
Okay.
The auditor does that.
Okay.
I will move that we appoint the person in the position of superintendent of the park department to serve as executive secretary of the park board.
I would second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Then treasurer is next. Is that,
No, we don't have treasurer.
That's not done.
we don't, that's right, we don't.
There's 3 of them.
What else do we have?
That's it on election of
That's
officers.
it for officers.
That's it, okay. Review of claims.
Mary has prepared 2 of them. The January ones are in yellow, and the most recent ones are in what I call pink, though I'm somewhat color challenged. And the only really noteworthy ones are, as you may recall, this time of year, utility claims are painful. It gets a little scary to look at the percentage that is expended in, a couple of months, but that's the nature of Indiana.
Any questions, any thoughts on any of these?
Alan, as we look at all, I know the utilities are high, they always have been. I mean, we don't have any property out there, do we, that is with a little insulation, a little this or that would be worth the money spent, or is it just, it is what it is, I guess?
It wouldn't be a little money. There are some buildings where I think we could make some gains, probably by adding some insulation in the attic of the Tippecanoe Battlefield Museum would help. The other buildings, for example, one of the real energy monsters is the dining hall. And the dining hall, if you recall, is old single pane windows around the perimeter of that big gathering room. It's something that have to be tackled in phases, or it would be, by our standards, it would be beyond our means.
Sure, I didn't know, I was,
You make a good point.
I'm just asking.
You hate to see energy going out out the windows.
Okay. Motion to adopt the,
yeah, I move we approve the claims as presented.
Second?
all those in favor?
Aye.
The opening of cash rental bids.
I'll start this and then turn it over to Matt, and I didn't handle this as well as I should have, so I apologize for that. Also, our relocation and our changing of times kind of complicated things. I'll just leave it at that. We have, as of the time I left the office, we've received three bids for the 25 acres across from the entrance to Ross Hills. We have a staff member at the office to cover the possibility of anyone turning in a proposal between the time I left there and 4 p.m., which is the deadline. But other than that, I'd defer to Matt. I mean, he shared some information in terms of where we go from here.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. For starters, the legal advertisement stated that bids would be received until 4 p.m. and that the opening of the bids would commence at 4 p.m. So it wouldn't be proper to open the bids until 4 p.m. And there isn't there's not a time requirement that you open them right after 4 p.m. So my recommendation is to receive the bids up until 4 p.m. Don't receive any bids after 4 p.m. And then the bids could be opened, and you can contact the highest bidder. Depending on where those bids come in, we would base it on the appraisal value. So you've had 2 appraisals. The first appraisal came in at a fair market rental value of $200 to $225 a month. So we're going to treat it, the median for that one as $212.50. The second appraisal was $250 to $275 per month. So the median for that would be $262.50. If you average the 2 together, it would be $237.50. So that's going to be our number. There's some give there on the front end.
Per acre, though. I think you said per month.
Yes, sorry, yeah. And so you're looking for a rental bid that would be at $213.75 per acre or higher. Anything below that is going to be below the 90% threshold, which the statute that we're going on it has a 90% limit that if you're going to have a bid and accept a bid less than 90% of the fair market rental value, you then would need to publish an additional notice. You don't have to reopen the bidding process. You just have to publish notice and name the accepted bid amount. So it's more of a notification, not a request for more bids to come in.
Not a
So
do-over.
you
Yeah.
can make the decision, yeah. And so my recommendation would be after 4 p.m., you can, again, stop accepting bids, and you can then open the bids. All the bids it's just required that they be available for public inspection. Open for public inspection is the language used. So what that means is, especially in a COVID environment, you're not going to, I assume, have an office open for people to come in and, take a look. I would just recommend that you put the contact information out there for anyone in the public that would like to view or get information on the bids. It's readily available, and they can contact the superintendent.
In the age of COVID, if somebody says, I want to see the bids, have them come to the office, or it's probably not permissible to take a photo of the bid with your phone and text it to them?
They're available for public inspection. The statute does not state that they're available for public inspection and copying.
Okay.
You're still going to have public access record requirements that are going to apply. I would take those on a case-by-case basis and take the request, and we would issue a response pending what the request is. I would not recommend that you take a photocopy
Right.
and start sending
'Cause
pictures out.
there could be address, telephone number, personal information that you shouldn't be putting out there.
Yeah, I'd recommend you send that to me first so I can make sure that we
Good
don't
enough. Okay,
be
that'll
having any
work.
other issues.
Well,
Yeah.
when I read that, and I got to admit it, I'm not a lawyer, so I was going to ask you. It read like they're open to public inspection, and they'll be at the park office, but the park office will be closed.
Yes.
Is that, so I read that right?
Yes,
Okay.
you read that right. I mean, the park office is closed. You don't need to make a special exception to your sort of COVID policy in terms of opening the office. They just have to be available for public inspection.
But, I mean, as of right now, our office is open. We just require that people wear a mask to come in. So we could have them available on the table there in the office for them. We just ask them to have a mask on when they review them, and that should take care of it.
You're certainly able to make a reasonable accommodation for someone. I think what's important is that the public has every right to inspect or, ascertain what the bid was and
Right.
who would have made the bid, and any information that would otherwise be available if you were to walk in. Let's just use the commissioners as an example. They open the bids, they take them under advisement. Somebody might be able to walk into the office and ask to see the bids. Well, the park office is going to be closed right now, so in order to still accommodate anyone that would like to see the bids, they're welcome to contact the park office, and we'll make accommodations.
We'll make it happen.
Yeah.
Do we
It's
need
still
a
kind of
motion?
read like, anybody's welcome to look at these, and they're stored on the top of Mount Everest.
It wouldn't be easy to get to them. We'll make sure we make it easy
The difference
for them to
there is that
get to
If
them.
they're stored at the top of Mount Everest, you still have to climb to the top of Mount Everest to see them, whereas in this case, you just need to contact the park office, and we'll make sure
Okay,
that you
thank
can
you.
view them and take a look. I mean,
Okay.
it's-
That's,
In a normal
That's great,
year,
thank
then
you.
you could go into the park office and take a look.
if they contact us, we'll make it happen. Do we need a motion on that, Matt?
I would recommend a motion that asks that the park board will take all bids that have been received up until 4:00 p.m. today under advisement. They will then report those bids back to the board. It doesn't have to be at a special meeting.
Yep.
You can follow up. But in the meantime, you can contact the bidders themselves. You can contact the highest bidder, ascertain if they're within the 90% threshold. Either way, you can start to discuss terms of the agreements. We have a lease agreement at our office that I've already begun, and so we'll be able to fill in the necessary final fields and final terms, and then we can bring that agreement before the board to vote on. One difference in my email, I noted that we would have to take it to the commissioners. Now, I was treating that as if it was county property. However, it's park board titled property, so I was incorrect with that. You don't need commissioner approval for this lease. You have the authority to enter into contracts concerning real property.
How many more of these do we have around? I mean, that are,
This is the only
The
park
only one?
board one. Foundation, of course, has title to property, but they fall under a little different,
okay.
restrictions.
I would make a motion relative to the bids as articulated by Mr. Salisbury in his prior comments.
Second that.
I can repeat.
And so on and so forth. Are there any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Good enough. Appointments to the Park Foundation Board.
Well, I
We need to
touched
approve
base with,
Dave.
I touched base with Esther. She agreed to serve another term. And I touched base, in spite of recommendations from our esteemed Park Board President, I did reach out to Mr. Lumen before drafting him, and he generously offered to serve a term on the foundation, but it seems like it should be by motion and second and properly done.
Okay. Would anyone, like to nominate Mr. Lumen? Did you talk to some people before this, or to line up your support, or?
I did, and
Well, the
we can
slimmest
talk
of
about that
margins.
after the integrity of the election after this is all done.
Well, are there anybody like to nominate Dave Lumen for being on the Park
I
Board?
would nominate Dave Lumen for Park Foundation.
I would second that nomination.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
And Esther again?
Mhm.
Okay.
I'd move that Esther Chosnick be reappointed to Foundation.
I would second that.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Old business, 2020 budget report.
Yeah, in the packet of information, should be immediately behind the pink copy of claims. I put in a copy of, and you obviously take it with you, kind of peruse it if you're suffering any insomnia. But basically, I thought it was a good idea for you to see, particularly as unusual as the end of 2020 was, what we turned back in, what we encumbered. So on the front, you should have a front and back copy that defines what we spent during the year, what we encumbered for projects in 2021 from 2020 money, and what we turned back in. If my addition and division didn't fail me, when you combine our personnel accounts, our supply accounts, and our repair and maintenance, our contractual accounts, we ended up either expending or encumbering just over 98.2% of the budget. Felt like we squeezed some good projects out at the end of 2020. One other item I wanted to share with you in regard to 2020 that won't surprise you a bit, I'm sure, is that in terms of revenue, rental income, it was brutal. The only area where we had an increase from the year before was in camping. We had our second best camping year ever because by the time we were able to open it up, Memorial Day weekend, people were just starving to get outside and get some fresh air. And so it was a very busy year in terms of camping, but in terms of other revenue, for obvious reasons, there was an awful lot of events that were rescheduled, some that were canceled altogether, and deposits and or rent were returned because the cancellations were for factors well beyond their control. I hope we never have another year like that where our activities are so greatly throttled down, but in spite of that, I feel like we made some good progress on some projects in the parks. And just if there's any other questions in regard to that one-page summary, I'd turn it over to Randy. Yes, sir.
Alan, just a question. I see in the repairs account, we were able to encumber most of, what wasn't spent, I guess. And so, as you look on the front page at building materials, that's kind of almost a 50-50 split between what was encumbered and what the balance left was. I was just curious as to how that works, or...
Well, what we do, as we get towards the end of the year, we have a wish list of items that aren't absolutely essential, vital, but that we would like to get done without going to the council for additional appropriations. And within those series, we can pool those individual accounts where we have extra money to take on a project like that. An example Randy will share with you in a bit is crack filling and seal coating of the drives out at Ross Camp. Big dollar item that, it's a big enough dollar item that if we have a couple of unforeseen major repairs, we're not going to be able to do all of it. So what we're able to do essentially, Denny, is pool that money together within accounts and take on projects that weren't absolutely essential, but that we've been needing to
Right,
do.
I understand that, I guess. So in the building material account, though, we just were able to justify or come up with the 5291 out of that total?
Right.
Okay, I just,
Yep.
okay, that's all we could, all right, thank you.
Randy?
Get it higher.
And just like Alan said, I'm just up here to kind of review 2020, what we've done. And it starts really with Ross Camp. The big money ticket item, I guess, that we had at Ross Camp this year was re-roofing the assembly hall. And Denny, kind of just to go with what we were just talking about, as far as us using money, we always seem to every year have an oops factor, and we're not expecting that, and that's exactly what happened at the dining hall. As you remember, when they started ripping off shingles, they found out that the decking underneath it wouldn't support what we wanted to try to do, so that, I believe, was an additional $10,000. Yeah, so, it's just these old crap factors that we just, kind of take it upon ourselves to wait to get to these big ticket items. But to go back to where I was at, the next item is up at the Battlefield Museum. And of course, you've already know this, but we put fascia on the museum itself all the way around, which obviously enhanced the appearance of that building quite a bit. One of the other things we did was at the shop, we eliminated on the west side of that building closest to the office, the shrubbery bed that lined that whole building, and we dug that up and repointed the block work that was underneath the ground. When we got in there, and I should back up by saying the reason we did that is because we've had, in the past years, water that filtrated into the shop on events where we had heavy rain. So we ended up having time to redig that foundation and then repoint all the concrete blocks that were underneath the ground. And then we added an additional coating. And we thought probably the worst thing that we could have done years and years ago was put that shrubbery bed in there in the beginning, because all it did was hold rain. And that was probably what our biggest problem was. But I will be happy to tell you, we have not had rain or water in that shop since we did that. So obviously it turned out to be pretty good success. So the other couple of things that we did was we worked at the Battlefield Chapel. We put new fascia boards on that and covered them up, plus rehung the guttering on that, and which was needed, but another tremendous effort through the staff to get that just looking that much better. Jed and Tom, and I was a little bit in there too, but those guys pretty much took the lead on all this stuff. And then we roofed, another section of our second barn, we call that particular long storage barn that we have just south of the shop, which, we did in-house too, which turned out pretty good. And then the really biggest thing, for me anyway, and it's really a small item, but we eliminated those 2 pit toilets at Marlin and the Fort, and I'm just tickled to death to have to get rid of those, and it turned out really well. It's just, they were beginning to be somewhat maybe a safety issue, not to mention aesthetics. So we've eliminated them, and it just made everything look a little bit better. And Alan wanted me to cover for 2020 encumbrances, as far as what we used money for. The first item that was on that list, that we had enough money to replace the monument lights up on the battlefield monument. And we took the, I don't know if they're halide, metal halide bulbs out. And those fixtures were in place when I was the battlefield manager, when I started 32 years ago at the battlefield. So it was a time, and actually they do have those new fixtures in right now. And they're about half the size of what the old ones were, plus probably, I don't know how many percentage more of light comes out of those LEDs, but it's going to be, I haven't actually seen it personally, what the lights look like up there, but they have to be tremendously amount better than what they were with the old ones. Next item that we're encumbering money for is just as what Alan was talking about. We're going to have pretty much all of the Ross Camp driveway repatched and resealed, clear back to the RV campground. Straight Line company is going to do that, which they were the company that did the ceiling project at the amphitheater a couple of years ago. The next one, we will be putting new doors in the retreat center up at the battlefield, 4 of those and a set of windows. And those windows, we won't be able to do all of them because there are so many windows you just don't even think about when you're walking around there, but when you actually take a look at how many there are, those are expensive. So we'll just kind of have to phase those in, similar hopefully to what we had this last year. Maybe we can just do a block of windows per year and then get that straightened out. 2 of the smaller items, we bought some plastic barricades for the amphitheater out of a company we've used in Illinois, but they can be used whatever. We're essentially using them for pedestrian control, and it might come in handy. Obviously, we don't know what COVID is going to do as far as how it affects the amphitheater and stuff. So you can use the barricades however you see fit, but they were needed, whether it's pedestrian or traffic control. So those will be handy. And I think the last, significant item would be the money that we diverted to Copperleaf and the work that Travis Noose is going to do for us at Tippecanoe, or Tecumseh Trail, excuse me. So, but for the most part, we do have that encumbered money, and obviously we try to put it together where we think it's going to be more beneficial in certain areas. So, it's a priority thing, and it's worked out pretty good. So I'm done. Any questions that I may help with?
One other encumbered supply was we're going to replace about 3 more of the aluminum light standards that are high pressure sodium on the walkway to the amphitheater. They're the original ones from construction in 1988. But Randy, per usual, Randy kind of understates his role in this. He says, well, that Tom and Jed do it, but Randy always has been, always will be a jump in and and get it done sort of a guy. But the projects that he was describing, whether it was chapel, those were ones, the tuck pointing or the repairs on the block, those are all projects that are done in-house. But nice improvements that are going to help us sustain that, for example, the shop for, a long time to come. That's all I would have to add.
Okay, well, thank you. New business. Fees, charges, policy. Reading this, it seems like essentially we want to put everything on hold for this year and think about raising it.
That's the staff recommendation.
Okay.
We feel like in light of 2020, and not knowing what our status really is, even now for 2021, we don't feel like it's a time where we would want to make any significant increases. But rather keep things the same for 2020. I think I made a note in some background information, know that at least at Ross Camp, the demand for those facilities out there, we feel like would justify a nominal increase in 2022.
Okay. The budget report for 21.
Should we approve those
I'll
rates and
move we
fees?
approve the 2021 rental fee schedules as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Why exactly would you have to approve doing nothing?
Well, we are approving leaving it the same as it is. I guess this is maybe the best way to state that.
Okay. Fine.
I think that you should all have a green copy of, and a copy machine obviously grab things a little crooked, or else I'm crooked. But the 2021 Park Board Budget Report, there's not a great deal going on there just yet, other than utilities being taken down quite a little bit. But we feel like in light of, for the shape we're in pretty good shape, because we feel like we're going to be able to largely, sustain our operations as far as our regular operating budget. I think our challenge is going to be much like, the commissioners are running into in other departments is, the pieces of the pie on some of the capital improvements. It's just getting thinner, but hopefully, as the year goes on, we go into 2022, we'll be in a little better shape in this next budget year as far as capital improvements and capital equipment.
That might be something we could say about every one of us. For the shape we're in pretty good shape.
I think it's a Scott Rumble expression from the foundation. For the shape we're in pretty good shape.
Yeah. Okay. I have a question about, do you have any feel for what the county is going to be like as a whole for revenues and this sort of thing? And because it just seems like everybody seems to be getting along pretty much fine, for given the fact that so many people are out of work and incomes are down and all of these things. I'm surprised that there haven't been some catastrophes occur. But seems like we're in pretty good shape.
I don't have enough certain information to make a educated comment there. I think there's a lot of factors. I have conversations periodically with Bob Flanagan, and he explains some things to me. Then my head starts to go around in circles a little bit, because it's overall county budgeting. I'm sure Paula could tell you. When I'm in budget hearings, I get lost pretty quick. I just worry about our own little thing. And to be honest, I'm not educated enough, or I don't have the expertise to really answer that, Mike. I'd defer to anybody else who would care to shed light on it.
Nobody's been talking about massive layoffs of teachers or on the school side or employees or any of these things. It seems like revenues must be
Except for
somehow.
gas tax.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Gas tax, it's real tough because that's what.
Well, it wouldn't hurt. Thank you.
It's way down.
Alan,
That's scary.
it looks like, some budget amounts are up, some are down, but overall, there's not, really not, I don't see a total on here, but
Yeah.
it looks like we're similar to where
One
we've
area
been.
where we're really getting behind, though, is in our capital improvements. There was a hope to have kind of a regular commitment for capital improvement money, not just maintaining and replacing equipment. Right now, equipment money, we didn't get any for 2021. And I know cum cap is where it usually comes from, and that is getting thin. I mean, and we're to a point where I think we're going to need to start considering the possibility of perhaps leasing a vehicle, leasing a new printer that's a commercial printer instead of these little throwaway HPs that last about 6 months and then you toss them into e-cycling. But
Tom, if you ever a minute to address your question.
maybe we can come back to that. I mean, if you can shed some light on it, great.
He's in the middle of something. He will come over.
Okay.
Events status.
Want me to go on to event status in the meantime?
Well, it looks like we have to have some board action on Camp WAC.
Yeah, I was going to actually do that in the down in the superintendent's, either in events or superintendent's report. So,
Okay.
but as far as the events as a whole, I'm on the feast committee. They have scheduled the feast for the second weekend in October. They are not putting down deposits on anything that they don't absolutely have to secure because, with the volume of attendance there, we just don't know what the status is going to be. Last year it was certainly a no-brainer. You don't know, and that's the same thing with all of our regular return events, including Camp WAC. The reason they wanted the board to be aware is so that they wanted the board's permission to utilize the park if the conditions at that time allow them to do so. It's a great event. Should we go back?
Yeah, let's do.
You're not going to get. Actually, I think the board was wondering what your perception is of where are we going in terms of the financial situation with the county as a whole, and I said, I don't know.
So are you talking about short-term, long-term?
Yes.
Yes.
But
Well-
this year, we're
Yeah.
Well, we had this conversation maybe, I don't think it was at the last budget cycle, but the previous one about doing an annual an appropriation from EDIT for park projects and just potentially stockpiling some cash for future projects. And I think we should definitely give some thought to that. The only problem with that is in '22 we fully expect our EDIT funds to be short because of the pandemic. We're about a 2-year lag before we start seeing the shortfalls within the income taxes. So it's not going to be an ideal time, but it might be. So in other words, it probably can't be a great amount, but we probably should have conversations about doing that, even if it's just $20,000, $30,000, whatever we start with, and then try to get that built up. Exactly. Now we will have to. There's been a change in the legislation, meaning you do have to create a new fund then and physically transfer it to that each year, but that can be done. We do it for a number of different departments, but I think we should be planning on having those discussions about doing an appropriation each year.
Will the public safety tax take some of the pressure off of QCAP?
You would. It's not cum cap. It's EDIT. This would be EDIT.
What it's going to free up would be EDIT money, not QCAP.
Well, yes, and the general fund. Obviously, we used that public safety money for creation of the new court. So there's pretty significant funding that was relieved from the general fund that was offset by the new public safety. And then but we didn't use any of those funds for capital, meaning it's all payroll. So it's not necessarily one-time hits. It's renewable. And another project we did with public safety was the addition of folks for community corrections for to provide programming within community corrections and the jail for substance abuse and mental health issues.
As far as property taxes are concerned, there really is no fall off in any of that, that people just can't pay or something like that. It's not.
There's really no wiggle room within the general fund, which is property tax. The only place I could see where these projects could be funded would be through EDIT. And EDIT truly is considered our project fund.
Okay.
Cume Cap is limited and definitely the tightest fund we have, wouldn't you say, Paula? I mean, it's really tight. So I think any projects we do in the future would have to be funded through EDIT.
So your assumption in budgeting is that you're never going to see any really much variation at all in the property tax.
No.
That you can.
I mean, the only way
exactly what you're going to get with it.
The only way you can grow that is by growing your assessed value. Which we are seeing some of that. I mean, we're blessed to be one of the fastest growing counties in Indiana, but with that comes additional needs too.
So as far as the EDIT money, and I know we've talked about that before, what do we need to do as a group to stay in this conversation?
So you, remind me, you don't have a council member on this board? But you do or don't? No, okay. But
Our two council people are Kevin and Barry Richard now.
okay, but they're not on the board. They're okay. So the budget cycle happens in September timeframe. I would have your two council meetings, or I'm sorry, your two council reps come to a meeting in July timeframe and start talking about this and say, this is what we'd like to see happen. These are the potential projects we'd like to see funded down the road. Give them great detail about what those projects would look like. And then, obviously have conversations around that being an ongoing, an annual request. And then obviously take any feedback you might have, get their feedback then too, if there should be presentations to the full council prior to it going to budget hearings, and offer to do that as well. And then obviously you'll need to work through our office because the commissioner's office budgets those each year, those EDIT requests. So when those capital requests come forth, and that's done. When do you do that, Paula? What month? May or June. So you'll have to put in for that request.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I think we were in our event status for 2021.
Yep.
Feast has been scheduled for second weekend in October, very cautiously. Fiddlers has moved to August, just to help ensure viability of that event at the battlefield. We mentioned Camp WAC, and since they specifically, as Mike mentioned, since they specifically asked that I present their request to the board to be given permission to hold Camp WAC subject to our health situation at that time, that's probably something we should go ahead and take action on.
Okay. So do we want to approve their July
Yep.
3 days?
It's the second week in July.
Second week in July.
For Camp WAC, and for those of you that, in case you wish or need to be reminded, that is the activity at Bicentennial Nature Area where developmentally disabled children are given the opportunity to essentially water ski.
So we need a motion to approve Camp WAC having the facility in July, first week of July.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Superintendent's report.
Update on a couple of items very quickly. The Battlefield Eagles TCHA is interested in making the old, revamped, but old original eagle that sat on the arch at the battlefield into a display in the museum. As you're in all likelihood aware, that eagle is park board property. And so what TCHA would like to do is provide to us, and I would provide to Matt for review, a document that they've used in the past when individuals or groups have allowed an artifact or a display item to be used. And it basically just says, we're using for display purposes only, it's still yours. We're responsible for its stewardship, we're responsible for returning it to you. We, under no circumstances can it be sold or transferred or anything like that without the owner's, written permission. They, Leslie Conwell has a form that they've used. With the board's permission, I'd like to get a copy of that to Matt for review.
The license agreement, I assume?
Yeah,
For the license
it's,
agreement.
that's, I think, what it amounts to. I haven't seen it yet, Matt, but when I do see it, I'll get it to you. But, I think it would be good for that. It can't be put back outside because of the way it was reworked. It's not intended for outdoor use anymore, but I think there's a really nice story to be told there in the museum in conjunction, with the history of the fence as a whole. But if it meets the board's approval, when I have that proposed agreement, I'll get it to Matt and we'll move on from there. It's going to be a bit tricky, and Jed and Tom and Randy have all been looking at it because, this bird is 6 feet from wingtip to wingtip, and it sits on a solid steel plate about, what, 1.25 inches thick probably? Yep. Really heavy. So the display case on this thing is going to have to support probably 400 pounds, I would say. Then you have the challenge, okay, in the museum, you have the challenge of getting that 400 pounds up there and secured and not, have a wing taking somebody's head off or safely get it up there, have it mounted. But I think it's a really fitting place for the public to be able to enjoy it and for the story to be able to be told.
This eagle isn't going to turn into an albatross, is it?
I hope not. I hope not.
Okay.
And I don't know if we should have a motion on that or just take it by consensus. Matt, I defer to you on that.
I don't think you're at a point yet for a motion. I think
Okay.
that you've discussed it, and we'll wait pending agreements for review, and then you could bring a motion to the board at that time.
Moving on to the new
So
eagle.
I picture this eagle as being sort of like a real old house that just keeps sopping up money or something like that.
I don't think we're going to have to put any more money into this one once they get the stand, because it's going to be in a controlled environment, obviously.
You made mention that the Historical Society might be asking for some help with building a stand for it.
It's going to, the stand is going to have to be designed because I wouldn't feel good about just plain old 2x4 frame supporting something that heavy. But I guess we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Fly across that bridge, something. Speaking of the eagles, though, the new eagle, I think I shared with the board that I made a road trip from HE Double Toothpicks to Detroit back before, I think it was before the New Year's, wasn't it, Randy? And it was a truly awful day. And when we got back, the old eagle stood the trip pretty well. The new eagle had, when the guys really looked at it closely, probably in transport, had some cracks in the aluminum welds. So after contacting them, to their credit, they came down and got it. They're going to take it back to Detroit, clean out that area, re-weld, refinish, and they're going to bring it back to us. And then we'll look at it real carefully and get the doggone thing back up.
Speaking of other eagles, whatever happened to the one the Ag Extension Group had for the Ag Luncheon?
Ag lunch?
Remember that? The Ag Luncheon every year that they used to have. They run the eagle across the room.
Oh, where they had the eagle trainer, you mean?
You guys are way too young.
I heard the story that they had a trained eagle there. But.
Never mind. You had to see it to appreciate it. Moving along. Anything else?
I got a final item for me. I did receive an email from one of my favorite civil engineers, and it made me aware that the governor has directed DNR to go to the State Budget Committee to pursue resuming next level trails. And as you know, we've had work done for preliminary design of the trail around the Big Pond Bicentennial Nature Area. I don't know if they're only going to complete the second round of those grants, or if they're indeed going to honor the full third grant. If they're going to honor the third full grant, I'll want to jump all over appraisals for that corridor of the trail for matching fund purposes, and also get the folks at VS cranked back up in terms of finishing touches on their preliminary design and cost estimates. So it's a good sign, because I was not optimistic that those funds would not be reallocated somewhere else, but it appears that there's a good chance that program is going to be resumed, and my conversations with DNR lead me to believe that we can put together a pretty compelling grant application if indeed there is a round 3. The only other item I have in superintendent's report is you're aware of our progress in terms of the staffing changes. Working with HR now to make some minor adjustments to Jed Wright's current position, Assistant Maintenance Director, so we can get that posted both internally and externally. Select, I don't know, Randy, I would guess we probably want to try to interview at least 4 or 5 of them. We anticipate there'll be a good number of applications there, because there's a lot of people that are looking for full-time jobs with benefits, and there's worse places to work than where we are, that's for sure. Other than that, I would welcome any questions.
Anything else? Other business?
I would like to thank Paula for the accommodation in here. Max Walling is turning dials, or doing the voodoo that he does in terms of it being aired. He's working remotely. But we appreciate the accommodation, and we'll try to leave things in the exact way we got them.
Thank you. Adjournment?
Yep.
All in favor? Aye.
Thank you all very much.
Go any place? Like south?